Lessons learned from the Great Depression. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. Well, I've been talking in a couple different videos about the Great Depression of 1929. And my grandma lived through it. She was a young woman with 3 very small children at the time. And my mother was probably about 6 or 7 years old when the Great Depression began. Now remember, the 1920s were called the Roaring 20s because everything was going so perfectly well everywhere, pretty much, at least in this country, economically. And then came 1929 when the stock market initially collapsed or crashed, however you want to put it. It did rebound a little bit, I guess, in the early 1930s, and then it crashed again about 1931, 32, somewhere in that vicinity, and lingered thereafter for a number of years. And so my grandma talked a lot about the Great Depression. She talked a lot about how things really affected her life, and how it really probably affected her whole life as time went on. She did things differently than perhaps she would have had she not lived through that kind of time. Grandma came from what she called the old country when she was 5 years old. And she came over on what she called the banana boat. But it was really a ship, but they were considered poor, so they had to sleep and live in the bottom of the boat where they put all the bananas. And a lot of the bananas were rotten, and that's what they ate coming over in the ship. They settled somewhere in Appalachia, and she grew up in a poor area to begin with. And then when the Great Depression came, it became even poorer. So Grandma learned to never throw things away. One of the things she never did up until the day she died, she never threw a crust of bread away. She never threw any old coffee away. They would not make new coffee until they had drank all the old coffee. And they would not cook something new until they finished up what they'd already cooked. And Grandpa used to go fishing in the local pond for fish. And it was always said, don't choke on the bones. Because the catfish had bones to them. But oh, they were so great. And Grandma cooked them up, fried them up so good. They always had a garden, and they always canned their vegetables in the old, I guess it was bell jars with the seal on the top. And they had a cellar that they stored their food in. Grandma never trusted the banks, nor did Grandpa. They kept most of their money hid in cash. And after, the bank collapsed, there were new rules put in place to protect the money, but they didn't trust those rules. And as time went on and she saw the flourishing of the country and the flourishing of the economy again, she never trusted it. And even though up until she died, the country continued to flourish, she said there's always that possibility that the Great Depression will come again and could even be worse. So Grandma was always prepared. And she always saved every nickel, every dime. She was very frugal. She wasn't stingy, she was very generous, but she was very frugal with her money. And so was Grandpa. And they made do with whatever they had. Grandma had the money to buy new shoes, but she always wore her old shoes and even used rubber bands to hold them together. She just didn't want to spend that money on something that she felt that she didn't need. So they were very conservative in what they had. I knew another older woman who lived to about 105, and she lived in a little trailer. And she would walk everywhere up until she almost died. She'd walk 5 miles a day to the whenever she had to go to the doctor's office, she'd walk there. She never took a bus. She never took a taxi. She just walked. Maybe that in part is why she lived to 105. But she was very frugal, and everyone thought she was very poor. It turned out to be she had saved about $1 million in cash, but not in the bank, from what I've heard. And she never spent money. She wanted to know that she had enough money to keep her going if something, like the Great Depression happened again. So I think our generation and the younger generations have no concept of what these people lived through during the Great Depression. All they've known really is prosperity. Even poverty here can't compare to the poverty of that time. And so I think a lot of people think the Great Depression could never happen again. But Grandma always thought it could. And so she said it was better to be prepared for it than to not be prepared for it. So those are some of the lessons that Grandma taught me about the Great Depression, is to be frugal, to buy what you need, but only what you need or what you truly, truly want, and save the rest for possibly that rainy day, or as she called it, the Great Depression. From my house to yours, may God bless you. I hope you like, share, subscribe, and I hope to talk to you soon again. Bye-bye.